Hey guys, what's up? This is Zola for MotionWorks. Once again, I'm back to present another one of the A to Z of After Effects default plugins. And today we're going to be looking at CardWipe, and I'm just going to jump straight in actually, because CardWipe in itself is quite a vast plugin. As you can see here, there's lots and lots of options. So the first thing I'm going to do is keyframe the, basically as you can see, the effect basically splits your layer into little cards, which then rotate across, and it sits in the transition family, which is quite interesting. But by default, it isn't actually a transition, which is worth noting. As you can see, the cards are flipping over, but at the end of the day, we still have a yellow layer, which is the layer I've applied the effect to. So just to show us some of the parameters of this plugin, I'm going to go down to camera position, and if you've ever used any of the default After Effects kind of plugins which have built-in 3D controls, such as this one, you'll be incredibly familiar with what I'm doing here. And I'm just going to rotate this into 3D space so we have a better idea of what each parameter is doing. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the width. And this is just imagine the fall off. If we have a quick render here, as you can see here, we have a far wider width. If you can imagine, this effect is being driven by a very thin, probably white to black gradient, which is just coming across the screen in a vertical manner. Obviously, I've put the layer into 3D space, but by bringing the width down, as you can see, we can limit the effects of this down to even just one row, which is completely different effect in itself. I'm going to keep this at 25, or probably actually about 40, just as it'll give us a better visual representation of what we're doing. The back layer is, if you want to make this plugin a transition, I'll show you this later, you would change the back layer to what you want the layer to be when it's finished, the transition. Columns and rows, independent. As you can see, if you choose columns follows rows, you get the columns grayed out. So I'm going to leave this independent. Basically, this will mean that we can control these to rotate at different times, which is good for me. Here we can change how many cards appear in each row. As you can see, as I crank this up, we're getting more cards, and if you bring it down to 1, you have a kind of bit like the planks in a kind of fence. Which could be cool, I guess, but we're just going to leave this at 10 and 10. Card scale, by default at 1. If you bring it down below 1, you will get a little crack in between, maybe not crack's not the best word, but a little grid in between each one. And you can actually take this above 1, and as you can see now the cards are overlapping, which might be an effect which could be quite desirable if that's what you want to do with it. But I would probably only go below rather than above. Flip axis is just the axis on which the cards spin. By default it's on X, but you can have it on random. I'm going to leave it on that. Direction is the way in which they spin, so the direction in which they spin, you can have it on random once again, which is probably nice for having it just looking more organic, so I'm going to leave it on random. Flip order is basic direction in which the wipe will go, because this effect is basically a wipe. So that's quite nice from one side to the other. Timing randomness is quite important. I'm going to change this back to positive just so we have a better representation of what timing randomness does. If you put this to, I'd say keep this quite low at +2. Now we can have a look. We're getting tiles flipping over at different points. This is making the whole thing look far less scripted and a lot more organic, which is definitely a plus in my book. So I would definitely always recommend putting the timing randomness up as well. And last but not least, you have you can switch this to camera position, corner pin if that's what you want to do. You can even bring in a comp camera if you want to use a comp camera, and so that would free up your layer to integrate with all other 3D layers, rather than doing what I'm doing here, which is using the plugin's 3D camera. Down here we have lighting, material, position. If you've ever turned a layer 3D, in After Effects, you'll be quite familiar with what these are, so I'm not going to cover those so much. What I'm going to do now is we're already at 5 minutes, so I'm going to jump straight into some examples. Here we have quite a nice thing, and we have these little kind of squares, and what I've done here is I've used the effect to our advantage here. So I've made a little pre-comp of our whole composition. As you can see, is 480 by 480 pixels. What I've done is I've then divided that by 10, so we have 48 by 48 squares here, and we've got 10 of them. So straight away, by putting 10 and 10 here, we know that the card wipe is going to physically split each of these into separate layers. And obviously you can see these are just solid colors. Imagine changing these for pictures or little animations, and straight away you have quite an interesting platform to do some quite cool things. Here we have a light which is just going across, and this is what's providing the reflections and things which are appearing, which is quite nice. So what I've done is I've added a light and just gone down to on the material. I've put the specular and diffusion up, and if you go into lighting, you can choose first comp light, and what that will do is these lights will react to any light you put into their composition. And I've also here for this example brought the card scale down to 0.85. If I had it at 1, you would have overlapping, and that's in this case not a desirable thing to me, so I've brought it down so there is a little space in between. And if we come all the way down to the bottom, we have they're actually moving slightly. If you look at this X jitter, basically this means that the cards will move on their own volition, like slightly, and you can change how fast that would happen here, and so this would be a far more chaotic result, but that might be something you want to do as well. So, and you can also get them to rotate as well periodically, which they are doing here. Moving on, this is a really simple example. I'm not going to dwell too much on this. I've just got it to rotate from top to left, but you can see it looks quite cool. And I have a white layer underneath, and I've got a slight light sweep as well there, which is following the transition. So that might be quite a nice thing to do if that's what you want. Gradient transition. This is where you get into some of the more powerful capabilities of the plugin. As you can see here, we're starting from kind of outwards and coming inwards, and obviously there's a bit of randomness there. And this is also how you would use the plugin for a transition. So if we have a look at the card wipe, I have as the back layer I have pick 2, which is the pink woman. These are just pieces of artwork that I've done in my own time. I thought it'd be nice to illustrate the transition. So we're going from one picture to the other here. So that's how you would use the plugin as a transition. And for added fun, you could keyframe this ramp here and maybe move it around. I know this transition happens over about 2 seconds, so I'll move up here and move that there. Then if we come back into our main transition, hide this. As you can see now, we're getting completely random movement and turning, so that might be a nice way to add, once again, make it look more organic. Now lastly but not least, I've used this in probably a slightly more creative way in this instance. This comp is actually quite effects heavy, but what you want to keep your eye out for is these little things appearing, kind of it's almost like forming a tunnel in space, and then you could have a title crash in. But what we are looking to be doing here is these kind of cool little things, which are, as you can see, gradually getting bigger, and they're spinning and they're rotating. And this is done with the card wipe, just applied to a simple grey solid. So I'm just going to quickly run you through how that would be produced. As you can see, it's coming in and they're appearing. So if we strip away everything we don't need here, color correction, vignette, flare, particles, background, and also I've just done this 3 times, and then what I've done is duplicated it in 3D space. So if we bring that in, also we don't need this title. So as you can see here, we have, if I turn this effect off, to the layer that I'm using would be nice. Actually, I'll take one of the smaller ones. Okay, so if I quickly run preview this, you'll see that what we have here are, I've keyframed the card size. So they start out quite small and then they're getting bigger and bigger, and then they come up, but they're never quite reached full scale. So if we have a look at our keyframes here, we have the transition completion, which starts at 0 and moves to 100, which is why they're appearing. We have the width, which grows from 50 to 100, which is adding a bit of width to it. Card scale is the most important one, which is why they're starting out as tiny dots. And I guess you could leave them like that. That would give it a kind of Tron feel. But I've got them to come up. And also we have the jitter amount, which starts out quite high and then settles at 1, but still stays constant, so that we still have some movement. And then I've just wrapped that around the CC cylinder, which creates this in 3D space, duplicate it 3 times, turn that back on, which is how we've got this tunnel. So there you have it, and I'm going to call it a day at that because we're already over 11 minutes, but just to show you, it is quite a big plugin, and there are so many possibilities you can achieve with it. I would definitely recommend going in and playing around. So, well, this is Zola, and you can add me. If you go to zola-media.com, go to contact, add me. You can add me in all these sites that I'm on. And thanks for watching, and I hopefully see you soon in another tutorial from Motionworks.